Hey guys, it's OCB Communications, and welcome to my review of Godzilla 1998, the much maligned Godzilla movie, which a majority of people hate. It's a 5.3 out of 10 on IMDb, very low score on Rotten Tomatoes, and it's considered one of the worst Godzilla movies next to Godzilla's Revenge. You know, that one with that freaking. I think that's what it's called. I think it's called Godzilla's Revenge. Or is it. Yeah, it's called Godzilla's Revenge. That one with the kid who has the daydreams about going to Monster Island, and with the baby Godzilla. Yeah, literally. I'm Godzilla's baby. Derp, 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 derp. And blowing smoke rings. This is pretty much considered the worst Godzilla film next to that. I'm sorry, that movie is 10 times worse than this. And a lot of the main reasons why, I'm going to say right off the bat, I mean, I do agree with some of them. Some of the casting definitely was pretty weak. And the story and the climax, really fun chase leading up to it, but killing Godzilla with just a bunch of missiles and tying him to the bridge was really lame. So, but the look of the creature is one of the main gripes people have. Look of Godzilla, the redesign of Godzilla, this redesign of Godzilla, and you know what? Never had an issue with it. Never had a problem with it. Didn't have a problem with it as a kid, and I don't have a problem with it now. I don't have an issue with it. I think they were going for a little bit more realistic sort of take on Godzilla. I think they were trying to make him look more like a real lizard, like what it might look like if a real lizard was a gigantic. And I hear people say it looks like a Jurassic Park lizard. What? Because he looks more like a real dinosaur, unlike the Godzilla designs from the Japanese movies. The American movie was trying to separate itself from the Japanese movie. It wasn't trying to be the Toho Godzilla. It was trying to be the American Godzilla. It was trying to be its own design and its own creature, its own unique being. And it seemed to fail all across the board for a lot of people. But for me, I never minded it. I never had a problem with it. I thought it was an interesting look, a new, interesting redesign. Um, I mean, I mainly probably because this is the first Godzilla movie I ever saw. I didn't grow up watching the 1954 film. I didn't grow up watching the other Japanese Godzilla movies. I watched this as a kid. I saw this in the drive-in theater when it came out. And this was a stocking stuffer, a couple years later, when it came out. This came out on DVD in 1998. And like around the same time, it was a stocking stuffer for me. This is like one of the first DVDs my parents got for me to add to my collection was Godzilla. You know, I've always had fun with this movie, and I revisited it again recently because I'm planning on watching some more Godzilla movies after watching Godzilla 2014. I was originally planning on watching all these other Godzilla movies before I review Godzilla 2014, but then, like I said, I'd forget the movie, and then I would have to watch it again, and I don't want to watch it again. So I decided to rant on that first, and then kind of go, watch some other Godzilla movies and review them. And the next one on my list was Godzilla 98, so I checked it out again, and I enjoyed it. I wouldn't say I loved it as much as I did when I was a kid. I thought it was awesome and great as a kid, but as an adult, I'd say it's okay. It's above average. It's an above average big dumb fun popcorn flick. It's a big dumb fun monster movie. I enjoyed this a lot, watching this a lot more than than watching the 2014 Godzilla. This wasn't boring. There were a few moments where it kind of got a little bit dull, but nothing compared to how dull the 2014 film was for me. This film has more Godzilla in it. This has more scenes of Godzilla doing things. Um, Maybe not have the most desired looking Godzilla for a lot of people. But for me, never had an issue with the creature design, so it's not a problem for me. the way where Godzilla looks in this film. Um, but I do agree with people who have problems with the casting. There are some really bad casting choices, some bad actors in this movie. The screenplay is disjointed. There are some things that gags that don't work, and there's some things they're trying to add into it that just don't make any sense. And I do agree with a lot of people's criticisms of the ending. You have this really fun, exciting chase with Godzilla, while he's chasing after our heroes in a cab at the end of the movie, and on the Brooklyn Bridge, and Godzilla pretty much gets killed by getting caught in the bridge and getting shot by 12 missiles or whatever by helicopters. It was really anticlimactic, and really kind of a wet fart, limp dick kind of ending. And I do agree with some people the way they feel about that. It could have been a little bit more explosive, a little bit more bombastic. It kind of felt like they ran out of money, ran out of time on the screenplay, and just decided to shoot whatever that first came to mind, how to kill Godzilla, and that was it. Um, but I mean, when you think about it, up until when this movie came out, there were tons of Godzilla had been killed so many different times in Toho movies. It's like you can't use the oxygen destroyer from the 1954 film because then they say you're ripping off the Toho movie. So they had a lot of issues. I mean, and then when I think long and hard about it, I'm like, well, it could have been worse. It could have been some stupid virus. They could have tried to froze Godzilla. They could have tried to freeze Godzilla with fucking liquid nitrogen or some dumbass shit like that. It could have been even worse and 10 times more sillier. So, it is a little bit of a letdown, but at the same time, it's like one of those things where it's like, it didn't really honestly affect my overall enjoyment of the film. But as a overall quality of the movie, it could have had a little bit of a better ending, so to speak, a climax. Better end to that really exciting, fun car chase. Now, the film was directed by Roland Emmerich. A lot of people hate this guy lately, and pretty much, I don't understand it because I don't hate any of his movies. I pretty much, there's some movies of his that I don't care for as much as others. I say my favorite of his is Independence Day, but I didn't mind Day After Tomorrow. I think Dennis Quaid was great in that, as always. I think he's a very underrated actor. And I liked 2012. That was a fun disaster movie with some good performances, especially by John Cusack. Um, I liked this movie. I didn't love it, but I liked it. Um, I had fun with his early work, like Making Contact and Moon 44 of Michael Pare. I really enjoy Stargate. It's another childhood favorite of mine. Um, So, I mean, I really don't really hate this guy. I pretty much Roland Emmerich is one of those few directors for me that I pretty much like pretty much all the movies he's done. Um, yeah, like I said, even his early work, like Joey, was Making Contact, Universal Soldier. He directed that? I didn't know he directed. Yeah, he did direct Universal Soldier. I forgot. Yeah, he directed that. He directed Universal Soldier. That's a really cool one. Um, Something called The High Crusade, which I've never seen, that he did. He did a TV series called The Visitor. Uh, 13th Floor, I haven't seen in a while. He was an executive producer of Eight-Legged Freaks. And he didn't direct 13th Floor, he produced it. Oh, that's the one that sucked. 10,000 BC. Yeah, I forgot about that one. I forgot he did that one. That movie was horrible. That was an awful one. That was a pretty bad, 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 bad movie. And I haven't seen Anonymous, which is like a political thriller he directed, which I'm not really a big fan of political thrillers. And he also he produced a movie called Trade. Produced that. The Patriot, I remember not minding, with Mel Gibson. So yeah. 10,000 BC is the only film that he's done that I could probably say I really hate. I think was just miserable on all fronts. Godzilla, I don't feel that way. I don't think it's that bad. I think honestly it gets a little bit of too much of a bad rap. I think it's a little bit underrated. I think it's not one of the worst movies ever made. I'm sorry. There's a lot of good things that this movie does right. The build up that it has, building up to the first reveal of Godzilla when he first shows up and stomps around New York, I think is really well done and very unique and well made. It really grabs you. It really gets you going. It really sucks you in. You want to see. You're really on edge to see Godzilla. Did a lot better job doing that with the build up to seeing Godzilla for the first time, in my opinion, than Gareth Edwards' film did. Because there aren't teases in this movie. There's no cock teases in Roland Emmerich's Godzilla like Gareth Edwards' Godzilla. Gareth Edwards' Godzilla had like 3 or 4 cock teases to just piss you off. Here, there's no cock teases. There's just a little bit of, okay, this is the aftermath. And I like that. It was a clever way of doing it. In the beginning, 5 minutes into the movie, you got Godzilla doing something, showing up and messing up some oil tanker, messing up a tanker and causing it to, you know, yeah, Japanese fishing vessel, is attacked by an enormous sea creature in the South Pacific Ocean, and right off the bat, there's action. Something's happening. Then it just continues to go on and attack more things. Attacks another fishing boat, and these American fishermen are left completely out of their. The boat gets literally dragged underwater by this monstrous force in like what seems like 30 seconds, and now they're just stuck in the. They're just fishermen are just floating around in the water, probably gonna drown later. You don't really see what their fate is, but they probably drown, and they have no boat now. I mean, that's how you can tell it's this destructive force of nature when it attacked the Japanese fishing vessel. You had the Asian guy who was interviewed, and he said, "Godzilla, Godzilla, Godzilla." I thought that was a lot better done, with the mention of Gojira, the Japanese name for Godzilla in this film, that it was in Gareth Edwards' movie as well. Because the Gareth Edwards movie didn't have that sort of. It was just kind of a throwaway line. You just had Ken Watanabe saying, "Really called it Gojira." Yeah, Gojira. He just calls it Gojira. He just all of a sudden says, "Oh, Gojira is this is Gojira," and here it's a little bit more dramatic, but I think it actually works a little bit better. And so you get to the whole sort of thing. The beginning of the movie actually kind of opens up similar to Gareth Edwards' Godzilla with the stock footage and nuclear testing stuff. And pretty much what happens is there's a nuclear incident in French Polynesia, and a lizard's nest is irradiated by the fallout of subsequent radiation. Decades later, a Japanese fishing vessel was suddenly attacked by an enormous sea creature in the South Pacific Ocean. Later, a scientist named Dr. Nick Totopoulos, played by Matthew Broderick, an NRC scientist, is in the Chernobyl exclusion zone in Ukraine researching the effects of radiation on earthworms, was suddenly interrupted by the arrival from an official from the U.S. State Department, and they reassign him. Meanwhile, in a hospital in France, a mysterious Frenchman asks a traumatized survivor of the shipwreck what he saw, and he only replies, "Gojira." Excuse me. Clear my throat there a little bit. Matthew Broderick, I'm just saying right off the bat, he's passable as a lead. Is he particularly terrible? No. I've seen worse, but he's passable as a lead. He's not necessarily. He doesn't really command that much of a screen presence. And I think that's one of the problems the film has for me personally. It's Matthew Broderick. He's not particularly unlikable, and he's not particularly a terrible actor. He just doesn't command a screen presence. He does not command the type of leading man type personality or charisma. He's just kind of this nerdy guy next door, nerdy guy who is now the lead of your movie. It's like having Robert Carradine. I think that's right. Robert Carradine from. It's like having one of the Carradine brothers, from Revenge of the Nerds, play your lead. Like Booger is your lead, or somebody like that. It just doesn't really necessarily work that well, and you could see why he's not really fit for being a lead in a blockbuster movie. And later, in Inspector Gadget, because he seemed really out of place as Inspector Gadget. Here, he's likable. It's not necessarily the worst casting choice as the scientist, but I just think that film could have benefited from an actor with just a better screen presence. So I think my number one choice would be Jeff Goldblum. Have him reunite with Roland Emmerich, who we worked so well with in Independence Day. and have him play this character, Totopoulos, and have him be the lead. And instead of doing, have Goldblum do Godzilla instead of doing The Lost World, because ultimately I would trade Goldblum, being in this movie over The Lost World, because honestly I prefer this over The Lost World, Jurassic Park. Um, and so I think that ideally that's my number one choice, would be Jeff Goldblum. There's a few other actors I think wouldn't do that bad of a job, but I don't know if they're really, for example, like Peter Weller isn't really a guy who's really that marketable or bankable at this point in time, but I think he would probably do a good job as maybe an older scientist, older Dr. Totopoulos. You could have Nicolas Cage, possibly. When he's reined in, he can do a good job. And in this point in time, he was actually pretty much reined in with his performances and was still a pretty big star. So maybe Nicolas Cage, Kurt Russell. Nice to see maybe he gets to do his version of Jurassic Park, which he was thinking about doing when Jurassic Park was being made. Kurt Russell was being considered for the lead, but he turned it down. So maybe he could do, then he could add his touch to this. And he also worked with Emmerich before as O'Neill in Stargate, which is interesting because there's a character named O'Neill in the movie. And so it would have been interesting to maybe possibly have, excuse me, sorry, allergies for some reason, fucking allergy season or some shit. But anyway, but yeah, I just think a little bit of, those actors would be interesting to see what they can bring to the role. Michael Keaton, maybe. I mean, Michael Keaton isn't really that marketable at this point in time either, but you kind of get what I'm going at. I think that Matthew Broderick, he's not particularly awful, but he doesn't command that much of a screen presence as a as your lead. And I think in scenes with Jean Reno, he gets blown off the screen. So even scenes with Kevin Dunn blows him off the screen. And Kevin Dunn, who plays Colonel Hicks, I wish it was Corporal Hicks, but it's Colonel Hicks. Kevin Dunn is more of a supporting cast guy anyway, usually in a lot of films, and he blows Matthew Broderick off the screen when the scenes that he's in with him. So it's not necessarily it's a bad character. It's not written properly, or it's not performed adequately enough. It's an adequate performance by Matthew Broderick. It's just Matthew Broderick himself, other than Ferris Bueller, which he was a younger actor then, and he was just playing a teenager, and it wasn't a big blockbuster action movie. He just doesn't command a screen presence. So, but that's just my opinion. People are entitled to feel differently. But he was a lot better than his other co-star, this horrific actress, Maria Patillo as Audrey Timmons. She was absolutely horrible. She literally, to me, this is her acting for me. She used to be a puppy dog, and through some mad scientist experiment, she got placed in the body of a woman, and is now experiencing human emotions for the first time. And she doesn't know what to do with them, and she doesn't know how to act, and she doesn't know how to act normal, like a human. She was totally awful. Her acting was so bad that she didn't even act like she was a human being. There were moments where I thought she was a cartoon character. Her expressions, the way she said lines. I swear to God, just put some cat ears on her and put some pen and ink all over her, and she's good to go. Like, ready for the next episode of Bonkers, that shitty cartoon from the Disney Channel back in the day, which is trying to be like Who's Framed Roger Rabbit, but not really, and just a shitty version of it. So, she'd be right at home in that shitty cartoon with those awkward voiceovers. It was just really, she was horrible. Horrific, horrendous, and shitty beyond belief. Beyond belief. It was unbelievable how bad she was. The scene she was in brought the film to a screeching halt for me. I was like, she is so fucking terrible. The scene where she's crying because she thinks she messed up. She did. She fucked up and stole pretty much stole a tape away from Matthew Broderick without asking him for it. Of course, he's mad at her, and she's in the hotel room like blubbering, like. It just really fucking, like, I probably did I don't know, maybe I did a better job trying to act like her than she did, but she was horrible at showing any type of emotion in this movie. Horrendous. I don't know how the producers saw her screen test and said, "Yep, that'll work. That's exactly what we're looking for. A fucking alien from outer space's interpretation of a human being." What the? I don't know what the hell they were thinking. She is one of the weakest links of the film. She is terrible and really, honestly, hurts the film a lot. Thank God she's not in this film that much. But for the most part, she's like a really, really bad Anne Heche. Or or a poor man's Heather Graham. And Heather Graham isn't even the greatest actress in the world either, but man, she can act circles around this chick. I mean, I've seen kid actresses. I've seen little girl like actresses, like like girl actresses who can outact this girl. Shirley Temple acted better than she did in this movie. Definitely Tatum O'Neal. It's just like, come on. I can't believe they actually let this slide. She was so horrible. So anyway, in New York, a woman named Audrey Timmons, Patillo, who's a fucking Patooey, in terms of her acting, is an assistant at a news show station and is struggling to get a job as a reporter due to her unfair treatment by her boss, Charles Kamen, played by Harry Shearer. No matter how many times she tries to convince him that she's been working for him too long, she deserves a job. Meanwhile, Nick is sent to Tahiti and Jamaica, escorted by the military to observe a giant footprint, and then is later taken the wreckage of the recovered Japanese fishing trawler with massive claw marks on it. And I liked the whole setup of that. I like the way that, like I said, it's a nice build up. You have the fishing boat with the giant claw mark in it. Oh yeah, I'm standing in it. I'm standing in a footprint. Yeah, a giant footprint. It was like really, I like the build up. It really does put you on edge and really gets your blood pumping as the audience. As the audience member, you're like, you're ready. You're like, okay, what does Godzilla look like? And I remember the advertising blitz for this movie. Remember it fondly. Remember all the Taco Bell commercials. I remember the Taco Bell tie-in stuff. I had the cup holder that was patterned after this design, after Godzilla cup holder from Taco Bell. I had that. I had a Godzilla toy, actual toy of the Godzilla creature with the Jean Reno character with like a cannon that was like a mortar gun or something. And I remember having a lot of fun with those toys. And I also remember eating the Godzilla ice cream that came out when this movie, when this movie came out, the Godzilla ice cream came out, and it had like I think it was like shaped chocolate pieces of Godzilla. So like pieces of chocolate shaped like Godzilla and like vanilla ice cream. It was actually kind of pretty cheap, but it was pretty good. I mean, it was chocolate, nice, crunchy pieces of chocolate with, it was kind of like maybe like a crisp, Nestle Crisp chocolate, and it was in vanilla ice cream. So I remember like, getting my parents to buy Godzilla ice cream all the time when it was still for sale, when it was still in stores. So I remember the blitz. I remember the ads. I remember the trailers. The teaser trailers were brilliant. Some really great teaser trailers. And so I remember all that. And I think maybe the hype might have been a bit too big, and then it didn't live up to it for some people. But for me, it did. I mean, and for my entire family, it did. We went and saw it in the drive-in when it came out, and we all liked it. So, I guess me and my whole family are in the minority because we didn't hate the movie when it came out. We enjoyed ourselves. Anyway, so the Frenchman is also present, observing the scene with the massive claw marks on the ship, and he introduces himself as Philippe Rocher, or Rush, or how the hell you pronounce it, played by Jean Reno. He's an insurance agent, but is asked to leave. Um, but he's not really, of course, an insurance agent. He's one of the French. He's a French intelligence guy, and they have this sort of joke that goes on with his character where he's like, liking French stuff. He always asks for French things. Like, they get some donuts and he's like, what? No croissant? That other guy's like, you know what, a new coffee? We have a new this American coffee is terrible. And it's like, how about some French roast? And I admit I chuckled at those jokes. And they are jokes. They're not taking it seriously. This is totally a satire, in some ways, of how maybe we interpret the French. How a lot of Americans kind of look at the French as hating everything American, only wanting French things. This movie, I think, does a really clever bit of satire with those elements, with the character that played by Jean Reno. And so he introduced him as an insurance agent, but is asked to leave and aboard a military aircraft to decide who the creature is. Because they're trying to decide who the creature is, Dr. Elise Chapman believes it is giant Allosaurus. And Dr. Elise Chapman, I liked the actress who played her, Vicki Lewis. I thought she did a pretty good job. Honestly, I almost think I would have liked her better as the female lead opposite Matthew Broderick instead of Patui. It's instead of Audrey, played by Maria Patui, because Patui, because they're acting so bad, it makes you spit. It's Patui, duh. Yeah, I honestly would have rather seen that actress be the other lead. But Dr. Tatopoulos, so there's like the running joke where the people can't pronounce his name, which I agree with some people on that. I don't really find that funny. It doesn't really bug me. It's not annoying, but it's not funny. It's just kind of like, really, it's your attempt at humor. They can't pronounce his name properly. Good for you. But Dr. Tatopoulos knows it was too big to be a dinosaur, due to the fact it came from an island that had been known for nuclear testing and sees radiation from the skin sample. He identifies it as a mutant created resulting from the testings. Meanwhile, Audrey meets up with her fellow workers, Lucy Pilati, who is played by Arabella Field, who I had fun with, but she is a walking, like, Long Island stereotype. But a lot of Long Island women do talk like that. But she got on my nerves. Like the nanny, Fran Drescher, like that accent just gets on my nerves like no other accent in film or anything. Like just that fucking Long Island accent just drives me up the wall. And her husband Victor, Animal Pilati, played by Hank Azaria, which I had a lot of fun with his character. Audrey meets up at a diner, and they both tell her that her problem is not getting a job, is that she's too nice, and that nice isn't going to getting anything in their city due to her being new here. If she wants something, she needs to be more persistent. And I like the whole thing is like, yeah, honey, to them, you're just a bunch of breasts that talk. And then I like Hank Azaria's reaction to that. He's like, oh, that's a nice image. Like, that's a nice image. That's a nice image. And it's all like, hey, come on, I'm eating here. I have fun with that character. Honey, you're just a bunch of breasts that talk. I'm trying to see if they actually have that line. Yeah. He is scum. How, as far as he's concerned, you're just a pair of breasts that talk. And then Animal Pilates like, hey, there's an image. So I enjoyed that character. I really did. I had a lot of fun with Hank Azaria. His reactions were a lot like kind of how I would react to this whole scenario, all the stuff that's being said in this movie. And like they're talking about all this bad stuff, and it's like, hey, I'm eating you, come on. Anyway, on TV, Nick Tatopoulos is on the scene. He's on the news, and it's revealed that she and Nick dated when they were in college, but broke up with him after he asked her to marry him. Meanwhile, the large reptilian creature travels to New York City, leaving a path of destruction in its wake. And I really liked the scene when Godzilla first came in and started wrecking, a little bit of New York. I like that. It stomps its foot down. I like the way they set it up. You just see these cops and people just standing there, and then all of a sudden it's almost like there's an earthquake going on. The ground starts shaking, and the cabs and all the cars start bouncing up and down. The people start moving, up and down. Like, what the hell is going on here? And then Godzilla shows up and starts wreaking havoc and throwing cars and stomping on people. And there's that joke sort of thing where Hank Azaria is going to try to get a shot of of Godzilla. It was trying to get a shot of Godzilla with his camera, and you have the whole thing where what's her name, Lucy? She goes in and was like, "What are you doing, you freaking retard? Stop!" It was like, ah. So he goes in and he's trying to get a picture of the giant monster, and it looks like it stomps on him, but it doesn't. It just misses him. And then he's reacting like, oh, this is kind of like how I react anyway if I almost got stomped on by a giant mutant lizard. But I like the way it's set up. I like the aftermath. I mean, the giant hole in the middle of a skyscraper. You have the whole thing, like cabs that are stuck in the sides of buildings. And so Godzilla's wreaking havoc in New York, leaving a path of destruction in his wake. And then the city is evacuated, and as the military begins to search for the creature, Nick reveals that the way to get to the animal into the open is to draw him out with bait. And seeing how there's fish all over the place where he is hiding, he decided to use a giant pile of fish to draw him out of the sewers. But this Godzilla is actually pretty smart. This Godzilla isn't a big dumb brute. And that's what I like about the film too, is that this Godzilla is not only different in redesign and design and the way it looks, but it's also different in the way that it moves and the way that it thinks. It's not a big dumb brute. It's not like the Brock Lesnar of monsters. It's more methodical. It's more it uses its intelligence a little bit more. It's smarter, and it's faster, and it's more agile, and I like that. I like the fact that it's a little bit different take on Godzilla. This is America's take on Godzilla. And a lot of people didn't, even Americans didn't like it, but, to each their own. But I never had a problem with it, and I like that aspect of this Godzilla. It makes it stand out from all the rest, for better or for worse. But in my opinion, it's for better reasons than there are for worse reasons. It's more agile, so it's able to run around and be faster and quicker. And it's also reproduces asexually, so that it can, literally, I think that's where people get the Jurassic Park comparison from. It's just because it can reproduce asexually and it looks like a dinosaur, they're just thinking it's Jurassic Park ripoff. And I don't think that's really fair. It's like it just used a little bit of an element from it, but it's nothing like Jurassic Park. Other than that, reproducing asexually, other than that, it's nothing like Jurassic Park. So, anyway, you had the whole thing with reproduces asexually, and it's really agile, and it's smart, and it's quick. And it ends up tricking them to thinking I'm going to go for the fish, but no, it's too smart for that. And it realizes that they're trying to bait him out, and he sees how fish is, so they try to shoot at it, but they fail to kill it, and they only cause destruction and mayhem, and they chase it out of the city. And a lot of people have problems with this scene. These scenes where the helicopters, army helicopters, are causing more damage than Godzilla. And I have no issue with this because it's more realistic. I'm going to bring in the whole realistic angle here, but usually don't do that. But I'm going to do it here because if you're complaining about how ridiculous that is, it's not ridiculous because it is realistic. If there is a giant monster, this isn't a slow-moving giant monster. This monster was established early on as a faster, leaner, quicker Godzilla. So it moves faster than a helicopter can move. It moves faster than the human eye and the human brain can react to it. So it's a moving target now. It's running away and it's getting chased by humans with only limited human, capabilities. Their brains aren't mutated like Godzilla's is, so they're not super intelligent or smart, and they're also have to, they're dealt with their human reflexes too. They're not nearly as fast on the trigger as Godzilla is when it runs around in this movie. So Godzilla in this movie is a faster creature. It's faster than the helicopters, and it's faster than the human eye and the human brain and the human reflex can react to. So logically, it's this creature, since it's faster than what we can possibly comprehend. When you're in the pilot's shoes in the helicopter, you think you have it, you see it in your target, you fire the missile, and by then it's already too late because the monster has avoided your missile because it's faster than you are. It predicts it doesn't necessarily have psychic abilities, but its reflexes are faster. So as soon as you pull the trigger and the missile starts going, the monster Godzilla is already out of the way. And it's kind of like the movie Firebirds, for instance. I know it's a movie barely nobody remembers, nobody likes, but I do. With Nicolas Cage and Tommy Lee Jones and the climax. Because in this movie, this sequence, you have a lot of Apache helicopters. In this scene in Godzilla, '98, when the helicopters are chasing after Godzilla, you have a lot of Apache helicopters. And in Firebirds, you had the same sort of thing. You have Apache helicopters. And these Apache helicopters, at the end of the movie, are going after this drug dealer bad guy named Stoller, who's flying around in an ultralight, super fast, super agile, smaller helicopter. So they aren't able to catch this guy right away. They get him in their sights, and they start shooting, and he misses and gets out of the way because he's too fast, and he's too agile, and the Apaches are limited in what they can do. It's kind of like in Top Gun, for instance, when they're doing the air fight dogfights with the MiGs. They didn't hit the MiGs like on the first try, on the first shot. With the machine guns, the MiGs are spinning around getting away from their bullets. But there's no collateral damage in Top Gun or in Firebirds because this is all happening in midair. In Godzilla, there's a lot of collateral damage and a lot of buildings getting blown up because it's in the middle of a giant city. It's in the middle of a big population. It's in the middle of New York. And you have this monster who's big, but he's a moving target. So Godzilla as a moving target appeals to any other sort of moving target, to a plane or a helicopter in terms of combat. And you're going to miss. And you're going to miss a lot, especially when this creature is faster than you are. And, and pretty much every aspect. So I have no problem with this scene. I understand it perfectly. People who bitch about this movie the military causes more damage than Godzilla does. That's unacceptable, and that's stupid, and that's ridiculous. I think they don't know what the hell they're talking about, because it's not stupid, and it's not far-fetched, and it's not that ridiculous. If you have any idea of what entails to, get into combat with a moving object, you're not going to hit it right away. Godzilla isn't a sitting duck in this movie. So, it's not like they missed and it was standing right there. It was moving throughout the whole scenes where the helicopters were trying to shoot it and they kept blowing up buildings. And the one guy was like, oh man, I'm sorry. And because there's nothing he could do. He's asked or ordered to shoot this thing, but he can't hit it because it's faster than he is. And it's also a moving target. So you're going to miss every now and then. So don't have an issue with that scene. I just wanted to I want to be the guy who's going to defend that part of the film. Because I don't see the criticisms as valid at all. Because if you're going to do that, you might as well criticize a lot of other movies that deal with a lot of more of their collateral damage. And I'd probably say Superman caused more damage than Godzilla or the military did in Man of Steel, but that's another story. But here, the military caused damage, yes, but it's to be expected when you get into combat in a city in a size of New York with a creature who is a moving target and is faster than you are. So I have no issue with that scene, and I don't have a problem with it. I actually like that. I like seeing that aspect of it, that sort of collateral damage sort of aspect, and also seeing, hey, they don't get Godzilla right away. So, like the clever Godzilla, a smart Godzilla, which it actually ends up later. This Godzilla ends up. This Godzilla ends up coming in, and it ends up tricking the military some more. There's another time where it actually makes these two submarines blow each other up. So, and it also plays dead later in the film. So I could go really, really in depth more into the plot. We're getting like 40 minutes in the movie, so I'm just going to go from this point, and I'm just going to go a little bit, pretty much to the end type thing. So Godzilla runs away. The military think they chase him off. Reality, not so much. You have some sort of drama that goes on between Audrey and Nick. She steals this tape, which they got some footage from Godzilla or something where he's talking about how Godzilla reproduces asexually, and they have a little falling out, but they never got together anyway. So there really is no romance between those two. They never really got together in the first place. And everything I like about the movies is that there really isn't that typical romantic couple. It isn't there. Audrey and Nick aren't really a couple in this movie. They're just colleagues or friends or acquaintances. And you can understand why Matthew Broderick pissed at her because of this, because she puts his footage that he figured out, the tape, on the news to get a story, which actually the story ends up getting taken by her asshole boss, and Matthew Broderick ends up getting fired from the military, group who were working on trying to stop Godzilla and so forth. Matthew Broderick then gets, meets Jean Reno, who, says he's from the department of the DGSE, the French Foreign Intelligence Agency. He and his colleagues have been they think they're responsible for the creation of this monster, Godzilla, and they want to, do whatever they can to find it and destroy it. So they ask Nick to help them. Victor, the animal, Hank Azaria, who had followed a cab to try to talk some sense into Nick for being sore at Audrey when she apologized as he was leaving, finds Audrey at his house, reveals that they were they're going after the nest, and decides to use this as an opportunity for her to get a good story, because they find out that it has a nest, probably has a nest somewhere in the city. They find the net. They try to trick Godzilla to open with a pile of fish again, this time in Central Park. But Godzilla, knowing that it's another trick, runs off and is fired at by the military, and it ends up escaping by diving into the Hudson River, only to be attacked by Navy submarines, but it ends up outsmarting the submarines, and it ends up making them blow each other up. And then if you find out the nest is, or they actually think, the beast, they're sustaining head-on collisions, the beast sinks, losing its strength, because they think they won. This is the point when they think Godzilla won, but nope. The authorities celebrate, like, oh, we beat Godzilla, which I'm like, even calling bullshit. Like, no, he's still alive. Ever seen Independence Day? Come on, this is by the same director of Independence Day. He didn't get the creature. And then Nick and company, they find the nest of Godzilla, of eggs, where Godzilla has laid its eggs, is in the Madison Square Garden. And I love the whole thing where, Hank Azaria is like, oh man, not the garden. I'm gonna get these. That's horrible. And I'm like, how could they do this to the garden, man? And I'm like, the Knicks did a whole lot worse to the garden. Knicks fans, if there's any Knicks fans who've seen this video, I don't know if there are any, but you definitely can feel that the Knicks had done much worse to the garden than Godzilla did in this movie. Anyway, so they find about 200 eggs. And the scene where they pan out and show all these eggs is like, I think we have a problem. Like, yeah, right, definitely. And then the eggs start hatching, and you see these really, really well done practical makeup effects of these baby Godzillas, which I don't really think they're really they're pretty big for babies. They're some pretty big babies. Okay, they're just mini Godzillas, pretty much. They're mini Godzillas, and I thought they packed, even though they're in a small package, I thought they packed a pretty good punch. I never had a problem with those scenes. I liked those scenes. I thought it was cool. I thought it was different. I liked the design. The practical effects were good. I thought it was suspenseful. I thought it was thrilling. I thought those scenes were exciting. Great special effects. I mean, some CGI every now and then. And even the CGI of Godzilla in this movie. It's not the worst I've ever seen. I mean, it could be, it looks a little bit dated, but it could be a lot worse. It doesn't look that bad, considering this is made in 1998. And there are some moments though where it's actually a practical effect, like you see an up close of its eye in one scene, which is really impressive. Um, but most of the practical effects, I think, are pretty much of the monster effects, creature effects, are pretty much reserved for the baby Godzilla scene in the Madison Square Garden. And I never had a problem with that whole scenario, except when they kind of make the baby Godzilla slip on gumballs. It's kind of corny, but it makes sense because all it does is slow them down enough so they can get away from them. I like the scene in the elevator, where you have this where Matthew Broderick is in the elevator and he goes down to a floor and opens the door opens and just he a baby Godzilla eating popcorn and he's like, um, the next floor or something. He's like, uh, take the next one. I didn't mind that. Um, and then you have the whole sort of pretty much what happens is they end up getting out of Madison Square Garden, ends up getting blown up in a really cool practical miniature explosion. A military plane comes in and drops a bomb on it, fire a missile at it, and blow it sky high with all the other uh, baby Godzillas. And the mother, Godzilla figures this out and is, roars in anguish and goes after Tatopoulos and company. And they end up getting in a cab, and you get this really fun, exciting chase scene with Godzilla chasing after them in this cab. And Godzilla's shooting fire at them. Godzilla's knocking cars in their way. It's blowing, it's blowing fire, which is sending, I think it's also like it kind of looked like it was maybe almost like blowing wind really hard and like knocking cars around in front of them. And they end up getting trapped in a tunnel, and Godzilla's smashing its head in there. And it's like trying to chomp on him. And I thought there was a lot of really unique shots. I think Roland Emmerich did a good job with the way he showed Godzilla, like unique shots, like really cool shots of the mouth up close, snapping at him, and so forth. And I was, definitely was pretty, was I thought it was pretty suspenseful. And then they've come up with this plan where we'll lead the Godzilla to this bridge, to the Brooklyn Bridge. And how are we gonna get? We're stuck in this tunnel. So we got John Renault's like, do you have any high beams? Turn on the high beams. So they turn on the high beams and somehow blinds Godzilla, of course, Hollywood screenwriting. And they get out of the way. Godzilla gets out of the way, and they start driving to the Brooklyn Bridge, and Godzilla chases after them. And you have this really exciting, I thought, really fun scene where Godzilla's chasing after them on the Brooklyn Bridge. And you have the whole thing where Godzilla actually ends up, the cab ends up getting in Godzilla's mouth, and Godzilla's swallowing them. And it totally reminded me of that scene with the dinosaur in the Back to the Future ride at Universal Studios. And it's like, I think we're being swallowed, ah! And they end up Tatopoulos ends up grabbing like a frayed wire and shocks Godzilla, and they end up getting out of its mouth, and they're driving some more on the Brooklyn Bridge, and Godzilla's chasing after them, and then that leads pretty much to the kind of lame climax where after that really thrilling, fun, exciting chase, Godzilla gets stuck in these bridge wire suspension wires, and then the helicopters come in and bombs away, and that's it. Even saying that the way it is you really can't find another way. It's really, at the end of the day, it's lame. And so, but Godzilla dies, but then they set up for a sequel with one of the eggs that still hasn't hatched. And, because and I also like the way that it kind of said the film was edited, especially after the Madison Square Garden scene, because it made you kind of think the movie was over. The way the music set up, the way everything was set up. The heroes have survived. They saved the day. They blew up. Godzilla's dead, and they blew up the babies. They're good. But no, Godzilla shows up and is pissed. I like that. That was pretty well done. And overall, I thought the movie was fun. It was entertaining. It was a fun flick. Is it perfect? No, it has its problems. Batuli, Audrey was horrible. Like I said, some of the corny sort of things weren't necessarily the best. Um, and so some of the lines of dialogue, Broderick doesn't have much of a screen presence. Some of the jokes didn't work for me, but overall, in the climax, the way they killed Godzilla was, any way you put it, was lame. Comparison to all the other Godzilla movies, it was lame. But I enjoyed it, and I think this quote from Joel Siegel is pretty much how I would describe the movie. It's big, it's loud, it's fun. It is. It's a big, loud, dumb, fun monster movie, and I think a lot of ways, I think this was a homage to the monster movies from the 50s. I think this is modern 90s take on the monster movies from the 50s, and I think maybe if you can look at this as not, you can get past the fact that it's called Godzilla and look at it as just like I said, an update of a 50s monster movie. You might be able to enjoy it a little bit more. But I think a lot of people, I don't have a problem with their criticisms, and they're definitely warranted to them, except for the military causes more damage than Godzilla. I have an issue with that because I don't think that's a valid criticism at all. And I explained why already in this review. But if you don't like the design, that's fine. If you don't like the actors, I totally understand that. If you think the screenplay is lame, I totally understand that. But at the end of the day, I just thought the film was a little bit faster paced than the 2014 movie. I wasn't as bored. I thought it was exciting enough. I thought there was enough things going on throughout the most of the movie that was a fun ride. It was entertaining. There's a lot of moments where it just kind of felt like a thrill ride attraction. And it had fun with itself. It had fun with its concept. It didn't take itself so seriously. It didn't treat itself like the gospel like Gareth Edwards' Godzilla did. And I think the film was much better for that because it actually told a joke every now and then. But other than those few things, I really don't know what to say about Godzilla except rated out 5 stars. I mean, and there's a few other things I kind of want to talk about a little bit, a little decent bit of trivia, because the first talk in original American production of a Godzilla film started in the early 80s, and Steve Miner received special permission from Mottola to produce an American Godzilla 3D feature film. Miner tried to find backers to finance the project, presenting concept art and storyboards from artist William Stout, full screenplay written by Fred Decker. Despite igniting some interest in Hollywood, studios were unwilling to gamble on Miner's proposed $30 million budget, and the film rights died in 1983. That's in 1985. That's when New World Pictures released its production of Godzilla in 1985. And in 1992, TriStar Pictures acquired the rights to Godzilla from Toho to produce a trilogy of American Godzilla films. So the premise of remaining true to the original series, cautioning against nuclear weapons and runaway technology. Screenwriters Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio were tapped to write the script and submitted their final draft in late 1994. Early that year, John DeBont became attached to direct and began pre-production on the film for a 1996 summer release. DeBont's Godzilla would have discarded the character's atomic origin and replaced it with one wherein Godzilla is an artificial creation constructed by Atlanteans to defend humanity against a shape-shifting extraterrestrial monster called the Griffon, culminating in the final showdown on Ellis Island. The only good thing about that idea and the whole John DeBont Godzilla is Stan Winston's redesign of Godzilla. I'd probably say that was one of my favorite looking designs of Godzilla. And as much as I don't mind this design of Godzilla, I think if Stan Winston's design for Godzilla, if you've ever seen it, which is going to be for the 1996 Godzilla directed by Jan de Bont, if you've ever seen that Godzilla, I think you would might like this movie a little bit more, because then you'd see this badass Stan Winston creation instead of this, what a lot of people call wimpy looking creature. But I never thought it was wimpy looking. I wouldn't tell that. I wouldn't say that was wimpy looking. I thought it was an interesting redesign. Is it my favorite? No. I could say I definitely like traditional looking Godzilla better, but I don't think it's, crime against the character. I don't think it's not Godzilla. I don't think it's like one of the worst looking creatures of all time. I don't see that like a lot of people do. Um, and I think probably it's because I'm not a Godzilla uber fan. I never have been. Like I said, I've only watched a few Godzilla movies. This is the one that I grew up with the most, is this one. So maybe that's why I don't have an issue with it. Maybe if I grew up with the original Godzilla and I watched that more, I might have an issue with it. But I didn't, so maybe that's why I don't have a problem with the way this Godzilla looks. And then that's when afterwards, DeBont later left the project after TriStar refused to approve his budget of 100 to 120 million dollars, which is kind of funny because 2 years later, a budget of 130 million was approved. So hey, by TriStar and Columbia. uh, um, there's one thing I didn't say about the the score. David Arnold did the score. David Arnold he did the score for Stargate, one of my favorite scores of his. I didn't mind the score. I liked it a little bit more than the score for the Gareth Edwards movie, but Gareth Edwards Godzilla, because I felt this actually had a heart to it, a soul. But there were moments it sounded like Speed, Mark Mancini's score for Speed. But hey, it's not really a bad thing. If you're gonna copy any type of score, why not Speed? But overall, I like the score. I wouldn't say it's one of his best. I wouldn't particularly say it's underrated. I would say that I liked it enough. It wasn't that bad. Um, the film actually was, if it was successful enough, it was a disappointment box office wise. Even though it made over 300 million worldwide, it only made barely over the 130 it cost to make in the U.S. And that's not counting the shit ton of money they spent on advertising. So I can see why they looked at it as a disappointment in terms of the box office. The studios did. But if it was a bigger hit, they had a sequel already, spec sort of script already written, where you would have the character, Matthew Broderick's character would return, as well as Jean Reno's character. And Matthew Broderick would take that egg at the end of the movie, and he would raise the baby, the Godzilla, the baby that would hatch from it as his own. And this would be the good Godzilla. This would be the Godzilla that would, be the hero for humanity. And the villains were the creatures that were going to come in and battle this new Godzilla were going to be these insect creatures. So it was going to be a good Godzilla in the sequel. And this was then pretty much used, this sort of spec script was used for the animated series, which I remember actually really enjoying, and I haven't seen it in a long time. I remember liking that show. And I think there's a lot of people who have seen the cartoon who didn't care for the movie, who liked the cartoon more. But it is a pretty well made cartoon, the Godzilla the series from the late 90s, based on this movie. But anyway, there's probably some other trivia and so forth I could talk about, but I've gone on long enough. Pretty much it's going to be an hour on this movie. But anyway, I wasn't planning on going an hour on Godzilla 98. But I felt that it's just a movie that I felt I just had to explain a little bit more of why I thought it was an above average flick. And I think at the end of the day, it's just entertaining. It's my idea of entertaining. I had fun with the flick. Is it perfect? No. There's some bad acting. The screenwriting isn't necessarily the strongest. But I had a lot of fun with it. There's a lot of thrilling, exciting action sequences, in my opinion. Likable enough characters. And yeah, I think it's a little bit underrated in that regard. I don't think it's that bad of a movie. I think it's a fun flick. It's a fun popcorn flick. It's a dumb movie, but it's a fun one. But anyway, I don't really know what to say except thanks for watching. And of course, do my rating. I'm gonna give it 3.5 out of 5. Like I said, it's a definition of above average flick. I think it's above average because of some specific set pieces in the film. I like the idea of a smart Godzilla, a more agile, faster Godzilla. I like Hank Azaria. I like some of the lines of dialogue. I like the baby Godzilla scene. I thought that was actually a pretty strong sequence. And I love the chase scene. I love the chase with Godzilla chasing after Totopoulos and company in the cab. And then that, going into the Brooklyn Bridge chase scene. I really love that scene. I love the way it's shot. I love the way it's edited. I love the way I love that whole scene, and I think that's a very thrilling, exciting scene. In my opinion, that's a better chase scene than the one in Jurassic Park. Um, but you know, anyone can feel free to feel differently. But I like the movie. I don't love it, but I like it. You know, above average, fun, entertaining popcorn flick that I'm glad to have part of my collection. And at the moment, my favorite Godzilla movie, because I haven't seen the other ones in a long time, or I haven't seen them in a little bit, you know, so we'll see. But anyway, thanks for watching my review of Godzilla 1998, a film that I thought had a good scale. I thought the size was big enough. I thought it was exciting and fun. There were a few dull moments here and there that brought it down a little bit, and some silliness, and some elements that didn't work, like the Siskel and Ebert parody, which was not funny, it didn't work at all. But and a lackluster climax. But I think if it had a better ending, if it had you know, the final death of the creature lived that actually was, in my opinion, worthy of the fun, exciting chase that led up to it, this would probably be a 4-star flick or even higher than that. But that ending, no matter how you put it, getting caught in bridge wires and shot with a bunch of missiles, is lame. So anyway, yeah, I just had to put that out there. Anyway, thanks for watching my review of Godzilla 1998, and I will see you guys later. See ya.